Welcome to the In-Depth Genealogist Chit Chat Live for the week of June 14th, 2016. Today, we'll be talking about the latest Next, we have Melissa Barker in Houston County, Tennessee. Okay, looks like things are good. Terry, how are you? This is
I'm good.
our
How are
executive director here at the
you
In-Depth
doing?
Genealogist. How are you doing, Terry?
I am doing good.
Good.
It looks like the
And
internet is a bit jumpy tonight.
yeah, I'm a little worried that I'm not seeing anyone else moving.
They're moving. They're moving.
Okay. Then
It
we
looks like it's
have,
corrected.
yeah, next we have Valerie Eichler-Lair of Val's Roots. She's based in Albert Lee, Minnesota. Welcome, Val.
Hi, thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Great to have you. So we've got a wonderful group of ladies here, and we're going to take a few minutes to talk about some things that are going on in the genealogy community. This week, a number of our Facebook friends and were at the Institute of Genealogical and Historical Research, known as IGHR, and it was held at Samford University. Have any of you been to that particular institute?
No, I haven't.
No.
Okay, me either. But I happen to know that Val has been to the Salt Lake Institute a number of times. And so, Val, would you be willing to share some of your thoughts about what an institute is like?
Sure. SLIG, which is Salt Lake Institute of Genealogy, is held every January. It's in its 21st year, and I've gone the past 4 years, including this year. And it is a intense, in-depth study of one or two topics. Except for, say, like the one that I took last year, 2015, the advanced genealogical methods. You had homework. I was brain fried by the second morning. By the last night and Thursday and going to the morning session on Friday, I was like, oh my gosh. But it was awesome because it challenges you to kick it up a notch or two. And the difference between an institute is you have 1 to 4 instructors the entire week. You're in a classroom with no more than 30, usually it's 25 students, and you get to know your seatmates and get to know the instructors, and you can also ask questions either during class or one-on-one. The difference between an institute and a conference, because I've been to the national conferences for the National Genealogical Society and the Federation of Genealogical Society, is you're going to different sessions with different speakers all day long, and there's 10 sessions or so going on at the same time. And so if you can't split yourself 10 ways, which I don't know anybody that can, it's really high energy. You're just bouncing all over the place. And then, of course, the wonderful exhibit hall, which I didn't go to some of the sessions so that I could stay in the exhibit hall a couple of times to buy all the goodies and the vendors. But anyway, an institute is really good to focus. You want to focus. And it's well worth every penny. Unfortunately, I'm not able to go to this next January. The registration is coming up on July 9th. And I heard earlier before we started recording that a couple of you are going, and it figures because I'm not going that next year. But yeah, and I highly recommend both. It captures both, and SLIG this coming year with the intermediate level. If you've been considered yourself a beginner for several years, it's time to go and get that next level, that next learning. So, but yeah, I really want to go to IDG sometime, and that may be, maybe next year, since it's later on in the year, I can do that one maybe. So, but that's it.
I love the idea of focused learning.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, like you said, going to the conferences, you're all over the place with all these different subject matters, and you're going to the institute, and it's one subject matter.
Mm-hmm. And it's 8 to 4:30 or 8 to 5.
Right. In Athens, Georgia, IGHR. So they've kind of changed it up. I think there were some logistical things that had come up with Sanford. I remember hearing something about housing or something. So next year it will be in Athens, Georgia. So keep an eye out for that. Registration is usually a fair bit ahead of when the course is. And usually, the big competition at registration is getting into the particular focus you want. So
on July 9th, on July 9th at 9 o'clock a.m. Mountain Time, especially for the advanced genealogy methods class, Judy Russell's the legal class, and a couple other ones. If you don't hit that button, you don't get in. You can go on the waiting list though. So yeah, it is, I was like, oh my God. And last year I was registering for my best friend in Canada, traveling, and I had my laptop over here, my desktop here, and it's like I did hers first because she was doing, Tom Jones advanced class, and I could do mine second because I was doing, the New York focus. So yeah. But if anybody needs any help, we're here.
I'll pick your brain later, Val.
Yeah.
No problem.
Me too.
No problem.
So moving on, I want to let you guys know of our digital magazine, Going in Depth, just came out. If you are a subscriber to our magazine, there are a lot of great articles on military research in there. We have Australia, Canada, Netherlands, and the U.S. Were all discussed in various articles. And Shannon Combs-Bennett, our creative director, wrote an article on using the National Archives website to search the catalog. So you might want to check that out and get some helpful tips there. Remember, our subscriptions are only $35 for a full year, and we publish every month, unlike some of the other magazines. So you get a full year's worth, plus you get the last 3 years' worth, so it's a great deal. Please check out our website at www.the.in and find out more. And lastly, before we talk about Roadshow, I'd like to congratulate Melissa on her recent article and reviews that were in the FGS Forum magazine. Congrats!
Thank you. Thank you.
That's so wonderful. So, will you be doing a lot of reviews? Are you overseeing like several people doing reviews, or how's that going to be working?
I am now, as of the beginning of this year, I am the reviews editor for the FGS Forum magazine. I took over for Paul Milner, who did it for 13 years, and so I have some big shoes to fill. Along with myself doing reviews, I work closely with many different publishers and also with reviewers. I collaborate with reviewers, find reviewers to review books, and so I hope to have a lot of different reviews. I'm sure my style is probably going to be different, but I try to find books on different genealogical subjects that might be interesting. Like I'm fixing to mail out 2 books tomorrow to a reviewer, and one is on mail order brides.
Ooh.
And so that will be coming out in our December issue, hopefully. So it's a lot of fun, and so so I am officially now the reviews editor. So,
well, congrats.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
how do we get
Wonderful.
access to the FGS forum?
It is a subscription electronic magazine. You can go on the FGS website and you can subscribe, but I also understand that you can subscribe through maybe a historical society that's local to you if they are subscribed to the magazine. Jennifer was saying something about that in the green room, and so maybe she can tell us.
Sure. I know with the Indiana Genealogical Society, they have a separate login. So you can log in and look at the magazine as a member. It's just a matter of reaching out to one of the officers of the group. And
I know who I'm calling on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, you can go and download it and read it at your leisure. And Julie Cahill-Tar has been working on that. I had worked on it previously. Beautiful magazine. They've been doing a really good job. So take advantage of that. It's a member benefit if your society is a part of FGS. So definitely something to look at.
And my article was on researching in school records.
Cool.
Yeah, I can't wait to read it.
Even if your ancestor didn't go to school.
Right. Yeah, I liked that title. I was intrigued. And you also wrote a very nice review of Christine Woodcock's in brief guide that she wrote for us on researching your Scottish ancestors, and we really appreciated you you taking the time.
Oh, sure. I was glad to do it.
I was very flattered. Christine was very flattered at what you had written, and you know, it's nice to get some feedback.
Always.
Yeah. Well, it was a great little guide, and so I was pleased to do it.
Great. Glad to hear it. So if you're interested in checking out Christine's guide, it is available as a PDF download, or you can get it laminated. We have all that available on our website. We're all about promotion today.
That's how you got to spread
And
the
now
word.
for something completely different. Well, yeah, it's hard to talk about yourself. It's hard to do that self-promotion, and you just got to force yourself to do it and hope that other people benefit from that resource. So we're trying.
Well, I got to
So
say,
let's move on
the
to Genealogy Roadshow.
let me just say something real quick though, because then I'll do the promoting.
Yeah.
The IDG magazine is awesome. It really is. You've got great writers and of all different regions and places, and not only the methodology but just talking about the records. You don't even have to tell me in the article how to use them. Just tell me about them and where do we find them, and it's an awesome magazine. And I can't think of, really, and I'm not just saying this because y'all my friends, but I can't think of anywhere else where for $35 for every single month, plus the blog and everything else, where you can get that amount of content. So definitely.
Thank you, Val.
I'll send you my bill later.
I'll send you your 10 cents.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because that's all we can afford. So, Genealogy Roadshow. Spoiler alert, if you have not watched it, go watch it, come back. But this week was filmed in Boston, and I know Terry is a huge fan of Boston.
Love it. It's a great town to visit.
Were you drooling over?
I wouldn't say I was drooling, but it was definitely interesting to watch and just kind of take a peek at all the outside scenes to see what you can kind of see.
Yeah.
They could have put a lot more great historical pieces into their clips, but I was just excited. Well, Boston is home to how many Irish? So I knew it was going to be a good episode that I would like.
Yeah.
But if you haven't been to Boston, it's definitely a place for historically minded people to go and just meander through town for a few days.
It's funny you should say that. My husband just got off the phone with a cousin of his, and she was out in Boston for the last couple days, and she was saying how she'd walked like 15 miles each day, just walking around to different historic places, and how much she was loving it and enjoying it. And I was just immediately thought of the show, and I'm like, yeah, I could see that.
The one piece of advice I will tell for the newbie who has not visited is please don't drive.
Oh.
We made that mistake. I was the
Really?
designated driver. It was crazy. To me, it was worse than driving in New York City.
Wow.
Whoa.
And I did New York City in that trip too, so.
Brave woman.
Well, it was me or my aunt.
Yeah, I could see that.
So it was fine. It was, you learned things. We learned about like the streets on our last day. So when you cross Washington Street, I think it is, the names all change. So the GPS is going to tell you to turn, but you're not really turning. You're going straight because the street's name just changed.
Wow. Yeah.
We had no clue. I guess
dear.
after Washington was president, all the towns were including Washington Street, right? So Boston wanted to be different, and that's how they made it different. They changed all the names on the other side.
Oh.
And
Well, that's good to know.
It is good to know.
Yeah, that's what we told our tour guide when on our last day. But there's just so much to see, so go and do it. Any GHS has those weekend things where you can come out and research, and one year I'm going to do it.
See, that's why I probably wouldn't have to worry about driving because I'd be in the NEHGS library. It's like, oh, I don't need to drive. Just come pick me up.
It's just stunning.
Yeah.
So.
Well, our first story was a gentleman who he works for the Salvation Army, and he was very interested in trying to find his connection to the founders of Boston. And luckily he actually was. So that was kind of amusing. You could kind of tell his wife wasn't that into it. Which is how my husband would be
Really?
if I dragged him to something like that.
What gave you that impression?
It was just, she wasn't as excited as he was.
Yeah.
But it was neat to see, as he got to learn, his eyes would kind of like light up a little bit, and of course, then when they started talking about that he was related to Governor John Winthrop and Dudley and Puritans and all that kind of good stuff, I think he was a bit overwhelmed.
Well, it's overwhelming. That was a long list.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
impressive.
I call this section the name dropper section.
Totally.
Yeah. Josh enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. And Sherry, you were talking about, all the different famous cousins and how they were connected, and of course, we all enjoyed the very last one that was the name dropper.
Right.
Josh's 13th cousin, first one time removed. 13th
Yes.
cousin, one time removed. I'm like, that's a distance, but it's still fun. It's still fun.
What I liked was the very last thing the guy said, "We're having holiday dinner together this year."
Yes, yes, I like that.
I thought that was awesome.
I like how he said, "Oh, I forgot one more. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry," and then puts up his picture. I cracked up. But
Yeah.
what got me is they did an enormous job. That tree was far and wide. Looking at what, and then all these, And what caught my eye was Amelia Earhart, because when
Yes.
I lived in Denver, Colorado, the weather, she did traffic, and it's funny that she did traffic because she's a descendant of Amelia Earhart in a plane, the whole bit. So it's like,
Wow.
yeah, but
Very
yeah.
cool.
And Humphrey Bogart, I like that one.
Yeah. Humphrey
No,
Bogart.
she
That's
does-
cool.
You got the reaction from the wife because she says, "Oh, that's where you get your good looks, honey."
Did anybody get a chance to see Randy Seaver posted over at Genia Musings his connections to all these people?
Oh, you
No, I
did?
didn't
Where did you see that?
And I think Humphrey was the only one that was a bit of a stretch, he said. He went into WikiTree and Genie and compared what they said. And some of the relationships were a little bit off, but it was very interesting. I didn't do an in-depth read, but I kind of browsed through it very quickly. So that might be something to go look at.
Yeah.
Thanks
Genia
for calling
Musings.
attention to that. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, and I liked that they had the little blurb at the bottom of the screen when they talked about, cousins removed. Really until I got interested in genealogy, I never understood what that meant. And so they had that little blurb up at the bottom of the screen saying, be sure and check this out. This
Why
is what,
why it's important?
why are they removed?
Yes.
Yeah.
My grandma always called them kissing cousins.
Well, my mom would always say, "Well, that's my first cousin, so that's your second cousin." It's like, no, Mom. And I even gave her a detailed relationship chart, and wrote it out for each cousin, or each, one. So, but it is important. What gets me is because when I first started, it was your second great grandfather or your third great grandfather or your second cousin one generation removed. Where did these times come from?
I don't know.
Who do you think you are?
I think so.
Is that the way maybe they say it in Europe? And maybe it's just moved over here? I don't know.
There was the one girl, Kelly Clarkson was the one who started it, and who do you think you are?
Oh.
Really? Because she would say 2 times or 3 times.
Like 3 times great grandfather,
Because it's like, where did that come from? But
Yeah.
We should go back and watch an episode or 2 before her.
And
Oh.
yeah.
She's the first one I remember saying it like that.
you want to borrow my notes?
They're probably that detailed.
Probably.
That's hilarious. All right, let's move on to the next story. We have Stephen Spillane. I guess that's how you say it. He was the whistler, and he was interested in his Irish roots.
Loved it.
Yeah, I was going, oh, Terry will have lots to say on that. So, Terry, what were your thoughts on this story?
Well, I thought it was a good story just for the fact that he was coming looking for, the family lore is that their so-and-so was this famous whistler from Ireland, and he wanted to know if that was true.
Yeah.
They proved that he was related to the guy, but they couldn't prove that the guy was the whistler. Oh, it's still a cool story all the same. What I really liked about it was that they really showed some different Irish records. They showed they talked about the civil registration being in 1864, which probably most people, I would think at this point, know that that's when it happened. They talked about the Four Courts fire and how just everything that was there is kind of gone now. One of the things they said, the 1800 censuses are completely gone.
Yeah.
And it's not true. It's not true. There are remnants of 1821, 1831, 1841, and 1851. Even if it's just a little bit, it's like that 1890 census that we're gonna.
There's just a little bit. Mm-hmm.
And those are available for free. If you just Google the Irish census, it comes up the 1901, 1911 census. It's in there. Just click the drop-down box for the year, and you'll see what's available. So I thought that was really important to put out there so people know you can look.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, the cancellation books, though, are what I wanted to talk about because I did get a chance to.
Yeah, I
read a
really
couple.
enjoyed that segment.
I did too. I really enjoyed
Me
that.
too.
So the cancellation books is probably the size of maybe a family Bible, but they're thick. Well, maybe about like that. When we went into the valuation office in Dublin, there were quite a few on the desk out, and while I was waiting for them to pull, I was like over there looking. I was like, trying to look through stuff, and I'm like, excuse me while I take a picture. I was so excited. So Griffith's valuation shows the one time, and it's for Cork, it was like the 1850s, I think, when Cork was put into the valuation. But they go back and they reevaluate it yearly. Okay? And if whoever was evaluated at that home was not there, they showed that they crossed it off, and then the new name was put on top. What they didn't show you is that it's done in a different color.
Oh.
Ah.
Okay.
So and then all the way over on the right-hand side, it will tell you the year. So, such and such, crossed out in 1903. So everything, like let's say in red, could be 1903, but each year had a different color pen.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, my kind of color coding.
Yeah.
Very smart thinking, for whoever really
Came up
starts
with
this
that,
process.
yeah.
No.
Well, Terry,
Yes.
do you know of? I was fascinated by the cancellation books as an archivist. I'm just fascinated. But do you know of anything that's similar in any other countries or in the United States? I couldn't think of anything in the United States that would be like that. And so I'm racking my brain trying to think if I've seen anything that's like that, and I just could not come up with anything.
In the U.S., the only thing I could think of would be more or less the deed from when you sell your house.
But they still don't go in and mark your name off and put someone else's name.
No.
Well, the only thing I can think of that's close to that would be the 1890 special veteran census and/or their widows, where it was for Union, but the Confederate soldiers are listed. They're just crossed off. So that's
Right.
the only one that I can think of.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't know, and I haven't
Otherwise.
really done any research overseas in depth. I've looked at a couple records here and there. Nothing like I've done with, my Irish.
I just love them. It was like a yearly census kind of thing, and I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah.
So the things to know about the cancellation, besides the colors and that they were doing this yearly, is that the cancellation books for Northern Ireland are in Prony's office. So that's in Belfast. And to make it easy for you, it's right across from the Titanic exhibit. So it's right across from where they built the Titanic.
Wow.
We drove by and I was like, it was like 9:30 at night. We could not stop.
And there's a connection to the Titanic in this story too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can't beat that.
The books for the Republic are in Dublin at the valuation office. Very easy to remember. So those are the things I just wanted to bring up really quick. Going to the Titanic Connection was very cool, though, because
Very cool.
the gentleman, do I have his name? I put all these notes about the guy and didn't even put his name.
Stephen, or you mean the ancestor's name? Timothy.
Yeah, Timothy.
Timothy, yeah.
Immigrated in 1903. Came to America to see his brother, who came to Boston 2 years earlier. He came on the Carpathia,
Right.
which was the first boat to respond to the Titanic's distress signal, but it was also the Carpathia's maiden voyage.
Yes.
Was it really?
Yeah, that his ancestor
was.
was on. Was
Yeah.
the maiden voyage. When Mary said, well, and then do you know, or what can you guess, what that would be? And he said immigration. And then when she said musical heritage, not musical heritage yet, but something else, I'm thinking Mickey Spillane.
I told him that.
It wasn't. She didn't bring it up, but that's what my guess was off in the margin of my notes.
That's funny. Another good thing to know, so this gentleman's family came out of Killarney. When we were in Cove, and I was talking to people about trying to find records, because I have no ship manifest for my Irish, they said it was important to note that the boats that were leaving were White Star Line and Cunard.
Mhm.
That was it.
Mhm.
So that's kind of important to know for people who are looking, cut out all the other ships. Those are the two you need to look at. So very interesting. Very interesting. Great story, great documents.
I really liked what Mary said. She's made the statement, oral history is so important.
Mhm.
And I wrote that down because it's so true.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Mhm.
I mean, how many of us probably wouldn't be here if we didn't have some kind of oral history that intrigued us, right?
Exactly.
Very true.
So stories that get handed down that inspire us to do the research.
Absolutely.
All right, so then they did the behind-the-scenes stuff.
I'll just get off camera right now and turn off my microphone.
Yeah, so we got the New England Historical and Genealogical Society's library, and of course we all drooled. And Melissa, who is a archivist, what do you have to say about it?
I was drooling as well, looking at all of the shelves of boxes, but he's made a couple of statements that are just so true. He said, trash in the family attic, and it's so true. But the thing that really got me was he called the archives organized chaos. And that is so very true, because if you don't work in an archives, you walk in, you would think, how in the world do you find anything in here? But it's true. It's organized chaos. The archivists know what's there. And so, and a tip for all genealogists, and I always talk about this in my presentations and my webinars, is when you go to an archives or a repository of any kind that collects documents and records like that and stores them and they wait to be processed, ask about unprocessed records. Not every repository will allow you to look through them because they just don't. But when records are brought in, when a collection of records are brought in, there is a cataloging done of them. There's an initial cataloging done of them, and that's kept on file to go with the processing. And so they know that they're there, and they know sort of kind of an idea of what the records are, who they came from, kind of thing. And so as a genealogist, as a researcher, ask about unprocessed records. They will not offer them to you. You're going to have to ask. But I know authors, sometimes authors are asked when they do these history books on certain people's, like so-and-so's papers. And I've heard a lot of authors say, well, the archives allowed me this special access because they haven't been processed yet. And processed means they've been archived and they're available to the public. And so, but that's just my tip for you, is to, you may get declined, but ask about unprocessed records.
Melissa, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
I have a small archive here that has changed hands on who's running it. And I went in one day and I had this lengthy conversation with the new archivist and her assistant about who I was looking for and why I was looking for them. Small suburban town. They were so intrigued by my story and all the information I could give them off the top of my head about these two families who I'm trying to prove that they're related, and I have nothing to tie them together. 2 months later, I got a phone call that said, we forgot what you were looking for.
Uh-oh.
I've not gone back. I've not been back. Because I was like, you sat there, we talked for like 45 minutes. I was very specific.
Oh, dear.
What's your best advice to handle situations like that?
My best advice to you is this: just patience. You have to, please remember that as archivists, we have patrons, even though it's a small. I work in a small. My archives is small.
Okay.
Our whole county, only has a little over 8,000 people in it. our whole county. And so, but I have patrons that come in on a daily basis. I have genealogists. I have researchers that are researching other things. And so, and think about each one of them are telling me their full story.
Okay.
I try to tell people,
Good point.
you know, and so while we are listening and smiling, you know, we're thinking, honestly, this is just an honest answer. We're thinking, okay, that collection I've got to work on later this afternoon, you know, that's what we're thinking about. You know,
Sure.
we love you,
Yeah.
but that's what's going through our minds. And so, but what I do, because maybe it's my genealogy background, I was a genealogist for 26 years, for 20 years before I became an archivist. What I do is I have an archives request form that when you leave, or even while you're there, I'll write down your name, I'll write down the surnames that you asked about, and that goes in a file. Or if you've requested something, it stays on my desk until I have completed that request.
That's
So
a great idea.
if an archivist doesn't do that for you, maybe you
do
can
it,
leave something
yeah.
for them
Mhm.
with your name, with your surnames, a brief description of what you are looking for.
Yeah, I would go
As a
back.
reminder.
I would go
And
back.
I would go back and just be nice, and if they don't remember you, just say, well, I know you see a lot of people on a daily basis. Let me just remind you what I was looking for.
Thanks.
have-
You know,
yeah, and have it
knowing
on
that
a
it happened to me, I know it's probably happened to many others, and I just figured you're probably the best person to give us advice on how to handle it. And you brought up a lot of great tips that you're right, we don't think of. What do you mean you didn't understand my story and you didn't keep it all in your head? I wasn't important to you.
Yeah.
One thing to
No,
remember
and
is that an archivist is not the county historian. We don't know everything about every surname. We're there to process and archive the records.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank
So,
you.
you're welcome.
Well, and I come across that sometimes as a presenter. You know, people come up to me afterwards and you know, I love talking with people. I love hearing their stories. But, you know, if you were to come up to me, you know, even a week later, I probably wouldn't remember what the story was that
Right.
you had told me that
Right.
I was so interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, it's all a matter of, you know, so.
What I liked is that
Anybody
Josh
else?
said, oops, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, does anybody else on
Well, I was just going to say
NEHGS?
that I liked how Josh said that even the suitcase, the materials came in, is archived and available to see.
And I have something to say about that, because in our archives, when we started, which we started 6 years ago, and our county, our records had never been archived. We were formed in 1871, and as a county, and their records had never been touched. And so I'm the first archivist, and so I got to do this from scratch. But the oldest records were court records, and we found them in 3 apple crates.
Oh my word!
Original apple crates with the original the sticker on the front that advertised the business. The oldest court records were stored in these apple crates, and we kept the apple crates as
Cool.
part of the archives.
That's neat.
That's great.
Oh.
But yeah, that was my favorite part of the whole show.
Then she stopped watching the rest of the show.
Why?
No.
I went back twice to look at it. I'll just admit it. I went back and watched that section twice.
I just would like to add that I would love a behind-the-scenes tour of NEGHS.
Yes.
I would love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, me too.
Speaking of tours, when you go to a repository, ask them for a tour. They might take you back where the stacks are.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We
It
have
would.
a Genealogical Society has a workshop every summer, and part of that workshop is they give tours. Because
Awesome.
we have it actually in the archives building,
Mm-hmm.
and they've got a beautiful meeting room there. And so part of the workshop every summer is they do tours into the archives. So it's great to go back there and be able to pull out all the old copies of the old documents. They'll show us examples, or they'll show us the real thing, or they'll, and explain how they keep them and their process and all that. And so it's really interesting and fun to go back and do that. It's cold back there.
Very cold. Yes. We
Yeah.
have to keep it cold. We have to keep it cold.
I mean, they've got things from the founding of the state, before the state was founded. They've got all sorts of wonderful things back there. So it's really fun to go back and look at them. So I would take a tour. Ask and see if you can get a tour.
Great idea.
Very cool. All right, let's move on to the next story. This was Megan Applegate of Genealogy, and she had noticed that there were 3 brothers that had died within the same year. I can't remember if she said the same date, which I don't think was quite right.
I think they meant the same year.
Yeah, the same year.
Yeah.
The same year.
Yes, it was the same year.
And they were Irish brothers, weren't they, Terry?
But,
They were the Finnerty boys.
Mm-hmm.
James, Edward, and Patrick.
Very Irish.
Very.
Theirs was a sad story, though.
It was very sad.
Yeah. Yeah, it was,
Well,
it was interesting.
I was just going to say, I liked how Kenyatta...
all the talk of this smallpox.
Yes, and I liked how she went and said what was going on during that time period. Let's look and see what possibilities could be. So showing them that they've got to look at what was going on, the history of where they were, put things into context to help find answers.
I agree, but I disagree.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
I agree because you have to. You're right. It's something you need to do. But I disagree because Megan said she'd already had, didn't she already have the death certificates? Or she had one of them maybe? Because she knew about Gallup's Island, didn't she? I'm not 100%.
I don't think she knew about the island. I thought that came to her as something new for her.
Yeah.
I can't remember, and I probably should have watched this one twice. Because the date of death, if she had dates of death and saw that they were spread out, or it wasn't by the fire date,
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. I guess I don't do such a broad search as historically what's going on. Like, I wait until I have specifics, so then I can look. Because otherwise it's a crapshoot on what you're going to find. I'm going to gather all this information that I might not need.
I tend to not look at the historical events until I've come to the end of what I can find. Not necessarily a brick wall, but I've gathered other things, and it's like, okay, wait a minute, I still need to answer this. Okay, if I get to that point, then I might start thinking about the historical aspects.
Yeah, because I think like she talked about the fire, but that was like 3 minutes that could have went to something else. Seriously, though, because some of this stuff, like I think as we got to the end, it was like sometimes it felt a little rushed.
Yeah.
Which probably has nothing to do with their taping. It was the editing.
Yeah.
I just felt it was time that could have been spent maybe on a different part of the story. How come we couldn't find the death record for Edward? That makes no sense. We've got the other 2. They've all died the same year. Edward's got this big stone with his name on it, and then there's no death record. What about obituaries? Again, big family stone.
Well, Terry, did you notice on that big family stone that Catherine and Charles also died in the same year, 1867? Though I don't know if those were children or parents, I can't remember, but there was a Charles and a Catherine listed on that same stone, and they both died 1867.
So what was 67?
I don't know. That's what I was when I saw that, I thought, oh, maybe they'll say something about it, but they didn't.
Yeah. I'll have to go back and watch again. It was an interesting story. It really, really was. And you felt for those poor Finnerty boys. But I don't know. Something was lacking in the story, I guess, for me. The records were cool, though. The death register, where it really showed who was the first one? Patrick, he was the mariner. He had smallpox for 6 days. He died on Gallup's Island. He buried on Gallup's Island. James was a fireman, smallpox. He died 5 days after Patrick. I mean, so close together. Could you imagine? Couldn't even. And then poor Edward, there's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No records.
Which I found interesting.
Yeah. Like, is there a lapse in records? Are we missing?
Right.
Are we missing a sheet when we scan them? It makes you think of all the scenarios of how he could be missing. But what I found most intriguing about this story with the smallpox is that the vaccine was available.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
How,
So why did they not take the vaccine? What would be the reason?
how
Was there-
expensive was it?
Hmm.
Could they afford it? I mean, I've not looked at anything to do with smallpox, so I have no clue.
Was it?
Well, they were saying that Boston just didn't have the system to get the vaccine out to people.
Yeah.
It wasn't available to get out. They just didn't have a process in place to be able to do that. So people weren't getting the vaccine.
No Department of Health,
Right. Yeah.
Family Services. Sad all around.
Very sad.
I think somebody should follow up, and I don't know if I will, but I'll make note. So we have to look at poor Edward and look for. There's got to be so many Boston papers to look for obituaries, and then you're right to look at the other two, Melissa.
Yeah, because when they were showing the headstone, of course, and I paused because I have a DVR. I paused. I'm looking at the headstone, and I noticed this Catherine and Charles, and I don't remember if they said that they were siblings or what, but they died in 1867. I thought, okay, sure, they're going to say something about that too. And I don't know if the smallpox epidemic when it started, so I don't know if they were part of that or not. But I found it intriguing that they both died in the same year.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what about this Gallup Island? What do we know about it? Can you visit it today? Obviously they've buried people there.
Yeah.
I had never heard of it.
Me neither.
Neither.
Intriguing. There are things out there I want to know.
Yeah, my list of things I want to know about is getting longer and longer.
Definitely.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting story. The next one was Misty Lindsay, who she had done a paper on the Salem witch trials and then was intrigued that perhaps she had family that had been a part of that. Misty that into the story, and her reactions just weren't there as far as what we would expect. But then again, not everyone is a history and genealogy buff like we are. But I know that I've been learning more and more about the Salem witch trials because I do have Puritans in my family, and so I've been wondering who I have that might be connected to that. I just haven't gotten far enough back yet. But they say that there are a huge number of people alive today that are descendants of that time.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that if you descend from the witches, there is that secret society.
Oh, that's true.
You can't.
That's true.
They have to come to you.
Really?
Shannon blogged about it or wrote about it in one of the past for IDG.
Oh, really? I'll have to look back for that.
When she was writing about Lineage Society, when she originally started with us.
Right.
About that. So I always find that so intriguing. I would love to be part of the, descendants of witches.
If you don't contact them about it, how do they find you?
They find you.
Witches.
They're witches. That's I have a funny Salem little story, and I have to share it with you. It's hysterical. So on our Boston trip, we stayed a couple nights, and we decided we're gonna drive into Salem because, well, we're here. You have to go, right? You think it was like maybe an hour drive. And we had no clue where we were going. The GPS was like crazy on the phone. So it was pretty much, we just kind of drove. And we were at the stoplight and we're talking and we're in a rental car. And this lady pulls up next to us and rolls down her window. So I look at my aunt and I'm like, okay, roll down the window. Do you need directions? I'm like, oh, no, we're good, thanks. And I roll the window up and my aunt's like, don't talk to people. They'll want to. They'll follow you and try to get you in their coven. I was like, now you know it was hysteria, right? They weren't really witches. Oh, she cracks me
I can see my
Well, Josh
mom
made a
saying
comment,
something like,
and I wrote it down, but I can't remember why I wrote it down. He said something about adoption and then something about explanation of modern genealogy. Can someone please remind me why I wrote that down?
Because her grandfather was adopted, so they looked at both lines. They looked at the biological and the adoption, and
It
most
came to me now. Yes. Go ahead.
only want biological.
Right.
right.
What do you all think about that?
It's a tough call because I am part of the DAR and it is biological. So if you're adopted, you cannot join unless you find the link on your bloodline. Well, I think it's harsh. I get it because that's what it was. The daughters of, you know.
Right.
But I felt for poor Misty as Josh was saying this because I thought, oh my God, she's Mayflower descendant through the adopted line.
But does that make her a Mayflower descendant?
It does not.
That's right, because if you try to become a Mayflower part of that, they're not going to accept her, are they?
Nope.
See, that to me, and I love Josh, but I just feel like that's a little bit of false advertising or something.
But it's not. I mean, it is her family. If you're adopted, it's your family, right?
Absolutely.
It is. It's absolutely your family.
So it's tough. It's
tough.
It's a tough rope to walk. You know, where do you go?
I just thought that statement, modern genealogy, and I thought, you know, there's an article or there's something in there for someone to write about the differences between, I don't know what you'd call it, old genealogy or whatever, and modern genealogy. I thought the comparisons would be interesting for someone to take on.
It absolutely would. But I think, like, we've talked about this before with Sherry, because Sherry has adopted children.
Right.
And your children, Sherry, are on your tree, yes?
Absolutely, they are.
Yes, they are your children.
Exactly. And I defy anybody to tell me that they're not.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
They are.
Absolutely.
So it's definitely a hard... Because now you're telling them their whole lives, you are my family, but now if tried to follow something that you did and couldn't do it because they're not blood.
Right.
Something just smacked them in the face and said, I'm not really family.
Yeah, absolutely. It is hard.
It's a hard, I mean, and maybe one day we'll see those things change.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, I wondered if any of these lineage societies would ever come around to, like Sherry's children, if they grow up and take on the genealogy bug that we have, and then they want to become part of this lineage society, and if they still have the staunch rules and guidelines, tell them, no, I'm sorry, you can't because, you know.
Right. Well, I'm wondering how much DNA is going to change some of that too, because you know there's people that are in those societies that are not the bloodline.
And
that's right.
So far, the only one taking DNA is the DAR.
Right.
And I've not taken the class to really understand. I wish Shannon was here because she could explain it to us, how they're looking at that.
No, she's busy with the DAR right now.
I know.
She is.
Speaking of DAR.
I wish I was there. One year I'm going to go.
But that Misty girl, she made a comment that made me laugh out loud, and correct me if I'm wrong, but she said, and it was about all this that she had just learned, she says, oh, it was a small world, and I thought, yeah, it really was at the time. There wasn't very many people here.
Back then.
Yeah. But anyway, that's just what I thought.
That is funny. Well, yeah, because it was the one was in Massachusetts Bay Colony.
Mm-hmm.
And the other was the Salem. So one was fighting against the witch, and one was accused of being the witch.
Right.
Yeah.
Or fighting for the witch.
Or
like,
the witch. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Sorry.
He was on
Yeah.
a jury or something like
Yes.
that. Yeah.
It is kind of ironic.
Yeah, very ironic.
She definitely had, through this adopted line, no matter how we all feel, in her family, some very cool stories. I'm still looking at the Flower Connection.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to join the society. It's too expensive, but I just want to be able to say.
Yeah.
So that.
I liked too when Josh asked her how she was feeling about, all this stuff with the witches and all that. She said, "It's a part of my history, and I'll own it."
Yes, that was.
I was
that was
glad
good.
you said that.
Yes.
And I love that she said Halloweens are going to be very different.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
That's really, I think, owning it, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm dressing up like my accused ancestor.
Right? We will all be witches. Too funny. There we go.
So the
There
next
she is.
story. Sorry.
Looks like Jen is frozen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we go on?
We should probably just go on. It was the Oregon Trail, wasn't it?
Yeah, so Jenny Moy,
But I
grandfather who was there for the Orphan Train, he went from New York to Illinois.
Yep.
Oh.
I recently read a great book. I belong to a book club here locally, and we read a book called The Orphan Train, and it was by Christine Baker Klein. And if you have not read that book, you really need to read it. It's actually considered fiction, but she did a lot of, I did some research myself, and she did a lot of research into the actual orphan trains. And when I read this book, believe it or not, this was the first time I had heard of the orphan trains. And they started in 1853, went to 1929. Wow. And close to 150,000 children, it's hard to wrap your brain around that, were put on trains and sent west. Now, the stories in that book, Orphan Train, are not pleasant. The orphans did not have a very nice time at all. But it's very interesting, and it talks about that they showed the document that the 9-year-old signed his signature to be a 12-year indentured. And I kind of question whether or not that was his signature. At 9 years old, that signature looked pretty good.
Yeah, very good signature. I thought the same thing.
Yeah, I would be skeptical of that. And then after his 12 years, his payment would be 1 Bible, 2 suits, and $150.
I wonder how many of them actually got it. I mean, I wonder, because we have to remember those children were not taken into those homes for the most part because those people wanted to adopt children. They just
wanted free labor.
Right. Yes.
Very true.
And then at the end, they showed the headstone. And my only thought on that is that headstone looks like it's brand new.
It did look new.
And so I was like, okay, the Orphan Train, though, if you've never done any reading or research on the Orphan Train, even if you don't have someone that was in the Orphan Train, it's a very interesting topic.
It is. I definitely learned from this episode because I didn't know that they weren't all orphans.
Right.
But I haven't done, again, any research on it. I don't have anybody that was on the Orphan Train, so it's not something that I would normally look into, but I am going to pick up that book. So definitely some learning for people within these episodes.
Just parts of history we didn't know anything about, that happened in our country that we had no idea happened.
And it's so diverse, and I mean, going back just a little bit, there were, the little snippets that they did with some of the people that they just talked to for just a second. This one Ariana who was African American, and she talked about her ancestor who was a free person of color, and he owned 88 slaves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we may have talked about this before with other episodes, but I think it would come to a surprise to some people that African Americans owned African Americans, although there was reasons behind that.
Because most people, they were family.
Right. But she was surprised. She said, how could he own slaves,
Yeah. Again, it's, not having that connection, not having that wanting to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I bet you probably could have Googled that. I mean,
that's right.
I'm not taking anything away from her, but seriously, that would probably be the first thing I would have done. But like, this doesn't make sense. And what can I find out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
But this, the Orphan Train, I thought that was really sad. So Fred's father died when he was 4, and he had 3 other siblings.
Mm-hmm.
And they all ended up in the juvenile asylum, which wasn't because they were sick. It wasn't because something was wrong. It wasn't because they were stupid. It was they were there to educate the poor children.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But it only sounds like, I think only 2 of them were put on the Orphan Train.
I believe you're right.
Yeah, I think the other 2, I wonder if they were just older and maybe they had outgrown, they were too old to go, perhaps. Maybe that was it.
I think the best part about that clip was, what was her name? I have my notes too, unlike Val's. Jenny.
Yeah.
She said, I wish I could talk to her and let her know that everything turned out all right and she made the right decision.
Yes.
Yes.
How heartfelt to really think back to want to express to that mother, like, the child was okay and he did well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That would have been a tough one to put your children on a train, It's like the people in Europe that put their children, put them into, boats and stuff, sending them to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
They were indentured servants, and a lot of them came over because their parents felt like it'd be a chance for them to make something of themselves. So I'm sure that's what that mother felt.
Mm-hmm.
That this is a chance for them to make something of themselves because I can't do anything to help them here.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it was New York City.
I mean, she probably didn't have the family support, because don't you, when you look back, like, so-and-so went to this aunt, so-and-so went to that uncle, first the children amongst the family. I mean, you would think this was not an option.
Mm-hmm.
So, sad. Definitely.
All right, we have one more story. We have Martine.
And Melissa kind of alluded to that one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We have Martine Russell.
Mm-hmm.
It was an immigration story. Was there anything anybody really wanted to talk about that? We're almost at the end of our time.
Just my thing was Ellis Island, the Ellis Island part, that they had come through Ellis Island, and how many had come from, that part of the world through Ellis Island. And they're right, we don't hear about that.
Right.
And the fact that his employer sent him.
Yeah,
I would like to know, I mean, did his employer just sponsor him to go, or did he have a job to do when he got here for his employer?
Same thing.
Me too, because he was a carpenter. Isn't that what he said? He was a carpenter.
Yes.
So it made me wonder if he had some reason that he was sending him.
It just would make more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then I wondered if he was supposed to go back and he didn't.
Bad boy.
Yeah.
That's a very good question.
Yeah, it was
these questions we would sit there and ask, and the guests are going, "Oh, that's wonderful, that's great." We'd be going, "No, wait a minute."
Yes.
Tell me more about this.
More.
I don't think I would make a very good guest because I think I would have so many questions.
Yeah.
That's funny.
probably why they haven't picked any of us.
Right.
They're like, yeah, let's pick somebody who doesn't really know anything.
It's true.
A great show, though. I think
else,
it was just packed. Yeah. It was packed with education. It was packed with.
Yes.
It was so diverse. The stories were so diverse this time, and I enjoyed that because so far I can say that in a lot of these shows, like Who Do You Think You Are and Genealogy Roadshow, they don't touch on the places where I do research hardly at all. But I can still learn, and so it's still great.
Yes. Absolutely. The one thing, Jen, you asked if there was anything else. In one of the small clips, Josh talked to a woman named Sarah Beardsley. She was, I guess, doing a little bit of research on Einstein, the Einstein family. I guess supposedly she might have a connection, and she wanted to know what to do because she was at a standstill. And Josh came back and said that the Einsteins actually intermarried a lot, so you had to really research all those different branches. So his advice to her was really keep looking into all the other Einstein families. And I thought this was a good place to really plug, like, you need to look at the One Name Study.
Yeah.
Don't just look at all these other families, but record all your data, submit it to the One Name Study, become a part of that, and, actively continue to work. Because when you get to that place where you're dead end, for me, it was just like the next no-brainer, like this is the next step.
Yeah.
I might not find my connection, but I might be able to bring some others together. So I thought that was important for people to know that there is a place to go that will help you and give you ideas how to do that. That is all.
That was a good tip. That's a good.
Okay. Well, thanks for adding that, Terry. I agree that, sometimes you get to a certain point and, you're in a locale and there's so many names. Sometimes doing a one-name study is the best way to sort it out. So, we had some excellent discussion points. I hope that our viewers have learned a few things. I know that I have. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. Next week, we will yet again be having a Genealogy Roadshow discussion. I think next week it's in, at least that's what I think it is. And we'll get to hear some more about all kinds of different background stories, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I will hopefully see you all next week. And now I'd like to remind our viewers that we would love to hear from you. Please feel free to drop us a line in the comments below, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, or send us an email at editor@theinDepthGenealogist.com. On that note, have a great day, and remember to go in depth with all